Carmen Orientation Roundtable. I want to do a couple of introductions to begin with. Some of you were out in the yard and you got to meet a lot of the different groups that are involved with the opera. Let us start with Betsy Dowling, who is the president of the Women's Guild. I hear Betsy, say hello. Autumn is right back here. She's the chairperson for the junior committee of the Women's Guild. Bruce Gordon is president of the Opera Club. And then Ann Duffy, would you? Ann is the one who is heading up the orientations. Ann, would you like to introduce your team? And Shirley Mosley.
And Shirley Mosley is my co-chair, and we have excellent cooks. This is Kate Burt, she's Betsy's daughter, Eileen Caprito, who did it last year and is still at it. Matt, who fried all the empanadas. Well, come on, Linda. Linda's not a member yet, but she's going to. But she's been cooking though. Oh, and I want to tell you, dinner will be served right when you get all through talking at 5 o'clock, so be sure and stay. Yes.
Oh, John.
John's back
I want to tell everybody.
Shirley wants to say something.
I just want to tell everybody that the food is all home cooked. We're not Spanish, but we can read the Spanish cookbook.
For those who have not been to an orientation before, what the ladies do is we actually start with the artists from the upcoming show, and we'll talk here for about an hour. And then the ladies are preparing different kinds of foods based upon the opera. It was a whole lot of fun last year with the opera Noah's Flood. And they had all these like recipes for things for locusts and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. So, but they put a lot of time into it and a lot of thought. And as Shirley said, this is all homemade stuff. This is something that they get together and they brainstorm and put it together for everyone who comes. So after this one, we hope that we'll see you at the next 3. Now, on to the round table for today. I'd like to go down the table and just introduce yourselves and tell us the role that you play in this opera.
I am Oren Gradus, and I am singing the role of Escamillo. I'm the toy both.
I'm Brad Dalton, and I'm playing Carmen. Yes, I will shave. The hair stays. No, I'm actually the stage director for the production.
Got scared for a second.
And I'm Geraldine Chauvet, and I'm playing Carmen.
And I'm Lyall, and I'm the conductor for the production.
Why don't we start? I think everybody knows the story of Carmen, but as a group, why don't we just kind of start from the beginning and walk our way through the show?
Great.
Well, then let's begin at the beginning. And that is, this piece premiered in 1875 at the Opéra Comique in Paris. A lot of people confuse that terminology with comic opera. It has nothing to do with that. It means a play with spoken dialogue. So in that respect, it's much closer to what we think of as a Broadway musical than traditional opera. In fact, it was regarded as risque and a kind of lower art form for the great Paris opera, which was at that time still playing Meyerbeer and works that we terminate, that we use the terminology grand opera. And so consequently there was no interest in presenting this piece in the Paris opera because it had spoken dialogue, and true pure opera did not. It was sung throughout. I always love to add this interesting fact that Ernst Giraud, who had become the house composer for the Paris opera, if you will, came from New Orleans. And so we have this very close association with his background and training before he really established himself in France and made one of the most meaningful contributions to the history of opera. Because I would say, in my humble opinion, which is never really humble, that this might well be the greatest French opera ever written.
I think you're right.
Now, you could say, your list of favorites, if you like something slightly more contemporary like Massenet or Offenbach's Tales of Hoffmann, but Carmen is the work that has held the world stage for all of the reasons that great opera does that. And its history is very interesting in that the composer died after the 38th performance of the piece, which was halfway through the year. The piece was somewhat of a scandal at its first performances because, of all things, women smoked on stage. And it just rocked Parisian society. Well, also the fact that the heroine was killed on the stage, and that was a major event. Lots of sopranos for centuries had died on stage, but never as an act of violence in the way that this piece portrayed it. So, for what was considered to be largely a family theater, the Opéra Comique, you brought your children to enjoy music theater and you encountered moral deprivation in the title character, in the fact that the women smoked, and in the fact that violence was visited upon the heroine in that way. So when you took your children home, you were arguably upset. Okay, so that was the rocky start of Carmen, and then it played around, and then Giraud set the spoken dialogue to music so that it was simply more seriously Italianate. And then it became a great success and was picked up by many, many companies, and now it is one of the top 3 operas in the world in frequency of performance. And that's because I think that this drama of 2 individuals that destiny has placed together, and we have this wonderful line, le destin est le maître, destiny is the master of the situation. An unlikely duo that are the undoing of each other is probably common to every culture and every age. And you also have Bizet's incredible music. It is truly one of the most richly written and scored pieces that I know in the repertoire. In fact, no less a great musical genius than Brahms said, I went to hear Carmen 60 times, and it is one of the greatest examples of orchestration that I can think of. And every time I conduct this piece, I think about the beautiful color combinations that Bizet chose. Remember, Bizet was 38 years old at this time and died right after the premiere. What might he have left us had he lived to be to a ripe old age? But it's one of the true musical treasures. It has such an interesting history. And that history has now come full circle in the sense that it was created with spoken dialogue, which serves a beautiful purpose because these are character pieces. Each piece in it is a character piece separated by dialogue. And then when you blend them all together with sung recitative, it does change the character of it. And so after much scholarship, all of the bits and pieces were brought together in some famous critical editions. And now as a producer, you have to make a choice. Do I do the traditionally sung recits, or do I use the spoken dialogue? And I will tell you that I use the spoken dialogue and have for many, many years. And I think it serves the pacing of the piece, and it places the music in the proper relief, if you will, in relation to the drum. So I have said enough. Geraldine, perhaps you would like to jump in and comment on this piece.
Yeah, you were talking about, for me, Carmen, it's about destiny, but also it's about liberty. It's a woman with a lot of passion, and we can think about I can say that. In all the opera we are talking about liberty, and I think this opera is really famous and touch everybody because I think every woman and also men about liberty we can recognize and find something inside everybody in Carmen. That's I think why the opera touch so many people.
Such a broad appeal.
Yeah, and for me it's not, when I'm on stage of course I've got to do this selection and everything, but it's not only that. I think it's really important for this in mind when we are on stage and when we are listening this opera.
Oren, why don't you jump in, because the stage director always has a lot to say.
I'm enjoying listening to you.
I want to allow Brad.
Well, it's actually very interesting. I'm coming to this piece in a very different way, if I may speak of it from a personal point of view. I've actually done this piece quite a bit, but from a different character. I've done this piece as Zuniga, the captain of the guard, which was a great acting role, especially when we do the dialogue. But I always felt a little unfulfilled in that the music is just so rich, and I always felt a little down when I did the piece because I really felt like I wish there was just more for me to do. So I took, I would just always bathe in the music and just felt like, I wish there was more, I wish there was more, and I never really, I was asked to, do I want to sing Escamillo, and I always thought of myself, I consider myself a bass baritone, and now, sort of at this point in my career, I said it's time for me to do Escamillo. So Brad came up to me, it was very interesting, and he said, gosh, you must absolutely love doing this role. And I got to say, it's, after doing all the roles of these sort of stand and sing bass roles, it's such a high to do this, probably one of the greatest, have one of the greatest entrances in all of opera, one of the greatest arias in all of opera, to go and be put right in the center of Carmen all of a sudden. It's suddenly to be thrown right into this brilliant music. It just doesn't get better than that. And now I've been thrust into what, like Maestro said, one of the top 3 musical pieces, probably, in the repertoire now, and one of the greatest of all times. And there's a reason for it. I mean, the music just, it makes you tingle every time you take part in it. Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing better than that. I mean, this is what opera, this is what an opera career should, this is what we aim for, and this is what we want to be doing. This is what the fun of our job is.
Thank you. And let me add, let me embellish a bit on his comment about being a bass and bass baritone. The role of Escamillo lies surprisingly low, particularly in the famous Toreador song. You have to be able to fill a 2,000-seat hall by singing low B flats. And most of the baritones that do this role simply cannot do that. They simply cannot. They do not have the bottom register to carry off the part. And the few really high lyric moments are where they live. So it's nice to have someone that can traverse the entire part with the tessitura demands of it and fulfill it. So my appreciation to you.
I think you'll see Oren pretty much eats up the stage. He's such a great performer, and our Carmen also amazing, so beautiful, spectacular. The opportunities, as Robert said, the characters, the roles in Carmen are, I think, so appealing because everyone is so flawed. Everyone has, they're just like people we know in life. There's a tremendous amount of opportunities for an actor to dig into the roles, and also the music reflects that. But they are not cardboard characters. Everyone is interesting and flawed in their own way. There's also a tremendous, there's so many things to talk about, but with the gypsies themselves, we could characterize them as bloodthirsty killers, but there's actually a tremendous amount of, and that certainly is an aspect of their life. But I think one of the most fascinating and charming things that, and Robert has really brought this out beautifully musically, is the repartee that the gypsies have. They're actually quite clever. There's a lightness to their, and a parlay between them, which is very familiar and very comic and light, rather than them coming in as a heavy band of sort of, deadly pirates or something, And that, I think that's a beautiful aspect of the show. If we look through the plot of the show, I think what's interesting is, in Act 1, we're introduced to Jean-José. Very quickly, he sees Carmen, and if you watch the opera, you'll see that very, very quickly, he's seduced and commits a crime. He's actually, before the opera begins, he has committed a crime of passion from his home country, well, his part of Spain that he's from, which is the Basque country in the north. Now, we're in Andalusia, which is in the south of Spain, and in the Basque country, he's committed a crime of passion over a card game. He killed a man over the fact that he thought he was cheating. So we already see a man, we're introduced to a man has, I call it a bit of a shadow, something with lies, some depth that lies with him, in him, that lives beyond, let's say, the normal rules of society or civilization. So in the opening of the opera, it's an interesting thing for Don José because rather quickly, he completely commits to releasing Carmen and letting her go from her imprisonment, knowing that he'll go to prison for her and committing a crime, which is amazing. But when he goes to prison and he thinks about her daily and he realizes he cannot live without her, and this, I know I'm going over plot, I hope that's all right. But in the second act...
Oh, just don't tell us how it is.
I won't tell you.
I mentioned Robert Comique. For you, it's a comic.
What's kind of fascinating is, he suddenly has committed, he feels, let's say the line of fate that draws him to Carmen has already begun. It's an interesting opera. Is it a moral tale in the end? Does it warn us to color, not color outside the lines too much, because of the dangers of what could lie within us, because of the path that lies ahead. But he comes to Carmen, and she's promised, I'll have an evening with you at my friend Lil's Pastia's if you let me go. So he comes to fulfill that, and she dances for him. And very soon after that, he hears the call of revelry and duty, the things that are coloring in the lines, come back to march with his fellow soldiers. And when he's leaving, he leaves Carmen, she makes fun of him. Look at you, you have no liberty, as Geraldine mentions. You are just, like a puppet. We blow the horn and you run back to reveille. And he suddenly shows us more of this sort of shadow. He wrestles with Carmen and he throws her and he sings about this passion that he has that lies within. She's seeing that, never thinking that he has this much within him, which is, I would say, of a dark or passionate nature, invites him to join the gypsy band. And he revolts against an officer, a superior officer, Zuniga, and he fights with him and refuses to obey his commands, and eventually Zuniga is actually executed by the gypsies, and he now is an accomplice, in a sense, to a murder. Runs off with the gypsies, but very quickly things don't go well between Carmen and Jean-José. I think he just can't leave her alone for a minute, to go off with the women and dance in the evening, to have fun, to be free. So we run into the second half of the opera, all of the problems which come. Escamillo is the rival for Carmen's love, and it ends with a duel between the two of them. He actually, against the greatest fighter of all Spain, has so much passion that lies within him that he almost defeats him. He almost kills Escamillo. It's completely unexpected. And Carmen arrives to save his life. which I think is significant, you know.
Well, in our production, I think we sort of even, I think we take it a notch up, that we underestimate he has so much fiery passion for her that it's so frightening that I think Escamillo even, that he underestimates in the duel.
Absolutely.
Just how crazed he is for her.
Right. Now the character that Bizet, that was added to the opera version of Mérimée story is Micaela, who is a representation of home and duty, and brings the messages from José's mother to him. So she's always coming back and saying, your mother wants you to come home, she forgives you, she loves you, she wants to see you. And so in the third act, when Micaela bravely makes her way up to this gypsy lair, very dangerous, she could be killed at any moment by these gypsies, she appears, and while José is having an argument about Escamillo and Carmen apparently being in love, Micaela is calling him to come home. And I always think of this as sort of, you're seeing José being ripped apart, just ripped apart on stage, because Carmen is saying, sure, leave us, go back to your mother. Now, there's nothing worse than someone you've been in love with telling you, you know, sure, that's fine, your mother wants you to go, I think it's a good idea. Right? So while this is happening, he's like, well, I'm not leaving then. I'm not leaving. If you want me to leave, I won't leave. And then Micaela says, but you've got to go. I've got more information. Your mother doesn't just want to see you. She's dying. Now he has that. She's dying. Yes, go. She's dying. I'll be back. You know, it's brilliant. It's brilliant theatrically. And by the time we see José in the last act, he really has lost everything, because his mother has died. He's not going to ever go back to be part of the military. He can't get a job. You know, he's just out. He belongs nowhere. And when he appears to Carmen, he's really, really desperate and kind of losing touch with reality, I think, because he comes to her and he has an idea that they're going to run off together, and he is going to save her soul. Save her soul. And in the production, I try to have José bring Carmen to the Madonna, which is on stage, the Madonna, which is usually carried around in parades and processions, and force her to sit, and let's sit here and let's ask God forgiveness for our sins, and let's go off and start anew. It's a very strange suggestion, especially for Carmen, who won't go along with any of it. And then, as we know, by the end of it, he desperately pleads, you must love me, you must love me. And then hearing the cheers in the bull ring for Escamillo grows to his utmost level of jealousy, and then refuses to allow her to be with him, and kills her on stage. Right. Oh, you're
there are no refunds on tickets.
Do you have a part for her?
What do we make of what we've seen? And what is the message of this opera? Is it a moral message? Is it about the dangers of following purely your eros? Following the bacchanalian sensibilities we have within us. If you look at Dionysian sensibilities as opposed to Apollonian, reasoning and staying in. What role does civilization play in keeping us ordered and protected from the danger of what lies within? Perhaps that's something we can walk away with. A lot of operas are written, I feel, they have a sensibility of a cautionary tale, in a sense, and so working on the piece is so, just to go to rehearsal every day with Carmen and with these lovely artists and Robert is just the greatest pleasure. I cannot tell you how amazing it is. It's the greatest pleasure you could ever have. I told a lot of plot, but I just sort of tried to give a little bit of an insight. Sorry.
Let me ask you a question, Brian. How, you talk about the reality of the show. How do you keep, because I myself see the productions of Carmen that Carmen is a stereotype. Escamillo becomes a stereotype. How do you make them real and keep them from going too far?
Well, I think...
And this may be for the singers as
That,
well.
I think it's more a question for the singers.
I think it is for the singers.
Brad's done a great job of, I think we as performers, it's our job to sort of take things as far as we can, and then it's the director who says, it's a little over the top. And Brad does a great job of saying, saying that looks a little much, and that doesn't work, and that's what a good director does, and Brad absolutely let us try, what we wanted, and then was able to sort of rein us in, and had a great eye for what works and what doesn't work. Brad was really conscientious in sending me videos before the production started on bullfighters, and we discussing the movements of bullfighters, and we came up with what we thought looked realistic and didn't look forced on stage, looked sort of elegant, but not hokey, and Geraldine is so graceful that she comes by it so naturally that it just seems like it just oozes out of her. But he sort of let us naturally morph into the characters by leading us, with guiding us, but not in a forceful nature. It just sort of seemed like a very natural process.
Also the same we talked a lot about also. Excuse me. I'm sorry for my English. Sometimes I'm thinking. We talk a lot also about the dance, because Carmen is always a stereotype of dance on stage. So we try to find a way to give, because I go to dance, but doing something really natural. And I can't look at the same word, but it's yes. I propose, and we had a good. I don't know how to say that connection.
Yeah,
working
great
connection.
Yeah, that's it.
It's,
Perfect. Yeah.
And also with both of you, with Robert and Brad and all the colleagues, and we try also for the fight at the end on the fourth act to find something realistic, and because it's about I think the fourth act more something near realism a little bit. Yeah. And it was one of the critic in when the opera was in the premiere.
Well, it is a realistic opera. In Italian we're comfortable with the word verismo. French, la vérité, meaning just more truth, but in that sense, theatrically realistic. As I sit here next to our beautiful Carmen, I'm almost hesitant to say, this is Don José's story. What we see is the constancy in Carmen. She has one of the greatest entrance arias in all of opera. That every man in the village shows up at the town square at noon to see her come out of the cigarette factory and entice them in whatever complicated or simple way it might be. And then she gets to sing her philosophy. And how many operatic characters get to do that? I mean, to literally give you a totally encapsulated picture of their ideology. And all of this is not wasted on this young soldier sitting there. Now, Michaela is in fact a creation outside of Mérimée novella, but she represents, as has been articulated, home and family and loyalty and purity. All of these things bound together. And that is where Don José starts, because in their first act duet, Michaela brings to him a letter from his mother. And the letter simply states that I want you to marry this girl. I've taken this orphan in, I've raised her almost as your sister, but what I really want is for our family to incorporate this goodness that is Michaela. And of course, what happens is he meets the quintessential femme fatale with all of those imperfections that Brad had mentioned. And so the struggle begins from the very beginning, and we see that progress through each of the acts. It becomes increasingly dramatic, and the drama with increasing weight. And we see the destruction of these two characters, and they come from such disparate backgrounds to meet in that place. Escamillo is always true to his celebrity calling. He is the greatest bullfighter in Spain. Wherever he goes, he's a rock star. Wherever he goes, people adore him.
So that's all very true to life.
And that's the only problem we've had in the rehearsals. No, these are
Sometimes
truly...
the limo's late. That drives me crazy, I can tell you.
So, I think Brad asks what is maybe the most interesting question, and we need to hear your questions here momentarily, and that is, what do we leave the theater with? You know, the Greeks said theater is a process of catharsis, that we go and we either live through the events, we identify with the events. I say simply with regard to opera, if we don't care about the individuals that are up there, then the impact of the union of the power of music and the power of drama can be wasted upon us. So we have to care about the people that are on the stage. So do we care about Carmen and her death? Well, of course we do. I mean, we care about the unjustness of one man's obsession overwhelming her to the point that she says, I was born free and I will die free. Frappe-moi donc, or laisse-moi passer. Either strike me down or let me go. You know, a lot of life in those, of real life in those lines. And so we can care about not Carmen's morality or Carmen's sensuality or things like that, but we can care about Carmen's life, because that is the opposite of this narrow, pure, simple, focused, directed, I must possess and it must conform. So I'm not sure what I leave the theater with from a performance of Carmen, other than I hope that it worked operatically. You know, but that's just a professional need. But as a person, and you know, obviously this piece would not occupy the place that it does in the world repertory, and it would not reach us in the way that it does if it did not have some message that we can all share in, that we can all understand that bad choices lead to bad things. Well, we know that.
But that being said, it's a difficult piece to sing. I mean, to sing and conduct, it's not an easy musical piece. I mean, you know, when you say there are other pieces that are more standard repertoire that I think are easier to put together. For some reason, Carmen is done so much, and it's a hard piece. I don't know if you see very many good Carmens. I mean, not to sort of toot our own horn, but I think this is an excellent. The cast you've assembled and the production itself, I think, is very strong. Musically, I think it's one of the stronger productions that's out there that I've seen or been a part of. You know, I kudos to New Orleans Opera for having this production. So I think you'll all really enjoy it because it's not an easy piece to put on its feet.
You make an interesting point, Oren. The Met production that is playing this season, and it's been around a couple of seasons, is not receiving very good reviews because the common denominator of the commentary is how one-dimensional it is, and that is it's dark and brooding. Well, actually Carmen is not dark and brooding. as a piece, it's full of the sunlight of Seville. Listen to that music. I mean, it opens in a sunny town square with villagers coming and going and living their lives. There's nothing complicated about that. In fact, the soldiers say, we're bored to death. All we do is sit here and play cards and smoke and watch the people walk by. You know, there's nothing threatening about that. There are no storm clouds hanging in the horizon. The second act is fun, I think, because first we're in a real locale. We're in a smoky, dark kind of tavern where the soldiers come to pick up the gypsy girls, and they drink and they smoke and they dance and they play cards, and it's a real slice of life. And then Escamillo enters, and good Lord, a bolt of lightning enters these people's lives. I mean, he is the rock star. And then it turns into almost kind of fun. The gypsies sing one of the famous pieces in it, a quintet, in which they're saying, Carmen, come help us. Look, we've got a task. We've got a special shipment of smuggled contraband, and we need your help. And her response is fun. Why? You want me to help you carry the boxes? And they say, no, what we want are your seductive powers to help us disarm the guards. And you have to look at the fun of that. You have to say, okay, there's still nothing threatening. And it's not until we get to the end of the act when Zuniga decides to come back and try to seduce Carmen that we end up in the fight between Don Jose and Zuniga that leads to serious consequences. And that's the point at which this opera takes a really tragic turn. But up until then, it's beautiful, it's fun, it's light, it has sensuality, but don't confuse sensuality with darkness. I mean, that's human nature. So it's a brilliantly conceived piece, and I contend that the reason it is so frequently performed is because it does speak to every culture and every generation. It's not your grandmother's Carmen, it's your Carmen. And it will be the next generation's Carmen. By the way, this is a solicitation. It's a great first opera for your friends that think they don't like opera. Tell them to come to Carmen. I mean, knock dead music, great drama, and we have wonderful performers. And the story is the story. The story is never less than interesting. So there's so much to recommend the work that we do to find the answers to this particular dynamic of Geraldine's personality and Oren's personality. Brian Email, whom many of you know since he's a native son, doing very, very well, could not be here today. He was singing at the Met last night, and he flew in today and did some walkthrough in the scenes, but will be in rehearsal tonight. But he's singing the Don Jose, and a beautiful young soprano singing the Micaela. Strong cast throughout, and it's always fun to encounter these pieces that we know so well that we can say, what do I leave with this time? Not just it's the same old Carmen with the same old message, same old story. What little glancing, prismatic interpretation did I get from this reading? And that's where I think the stage director says, oh, hey, let's underscore this. So when we get to José's desperation in the fourth act, how is it different from the last time we saw him just emerge from the crowd? And that's what I look for when I go to someone else's Carmen or our own. So,
one of the biggest characters in this opera, which we haven't really talked about yet, it's the chorus. The chorus, they start the show. Some of the best choral writing for opera is in this show. So actually all of you can talk to this about, Carmen needs the chorus to be able to sing with and sing to and play off. Talk a little bit in Escamillo as well. In the Victoriador song, it's the chorus that you're singing to them. Talk a little bit about working with them and about our specific chorus. And Carol Roush, the chorus master, is not here today, but I'd like for you all to talk to us about working with them.
I can say that I'm really excited to work with them because they are really, really energetic. And they are acting really well. So, for example, in the cigaria, with the cigaria, they've got this fight, and I've got my friends, and the others are enemies, and we can really act, and they are terrific. So it's incredible, and they've got a lot of fun, and for the chorus and also for the children. So it's really exciting because we can do so many things, and I think for Gradus, so it's really interesting because you can work some details with them because everything he has they do, and he's got sometimes not too much because they give so much. It's really super, really.
I think they're great. You know, Geraldine and I have sung at a lot of big opera houses. I think they are right up there, top quality, better than a lot of other houses we've sung at. Not going to mention some of the houses where the chorus is not always.
The ones that are inferior, you're not.
Yeah, there's some that have full-time choruses that maybe need to change it up a little bit here and there. And actually, I want to say that I was really impressed with the children's chorus as well. They were tremendous the other night. That was really the first time I had. Because I really don't have them much in my scenes. I do at the beginning of Act 4, but they were there for the rest of the night. They were excellent as well. So, yeah, the chorus and all around, just great work.
They are the support that every actor has. Because if I'm meant to be intimidating, if I just try to act intimidating, I can overdo it. But if those around me act as if I'm intimidating, they're helping and supporting me. So what they do is support every single character at every moment. And you know from watching opera at times or watching theater or something, if there's anyone on stage who isn't concentrated, boy, it shows. And it takes your attention like that. And they are able to give so much focus and intensity and concentration. They are wonderful. You have such a wonderful chorus. They're attentive, committed, artistically sensitive, hilariously fun. They tell me a million funny stories and jokes, Cajun jokes, and they are helpful. They'll walk up and say, "That's a nice sword you have, but I have an ornamental sword at home. Let me bring it in case you want to use it," and you see it and you think, "Oh, it's a really nice sword, but we might ruin it. And we better keep our sword," or whatever. You know, we're fighting with that sword. We don't want to destroy it. They're very. I mean, it is an aspect of the show that if it were not in the right place, we would be in trouble, and we're lucky. And you should be proud that you have such a wonderful chorus because they are doing an absolutely wonderful job. And to be in the room with them is exciting. You know, I always think that the thing that's great about an opera, I mean, one of the moments in opera that I wish could be shared with everyone is when you go into the rehearsal hall, and we're in a very beautiful space in a church that has resonant, you know, lots of wood, and it's resonant in there, and you sit, like, right here, and you're all the opera, right, performing for me, and the opera is this close. That is such an incredible experience. If you ever have any way to get into an opera final rehearsal in the room, don't, you know, definitely
Major donors receive that.
I also want to say a lot of
it's an extraordinary experience because I'm just going to say the concentration of that much intensity so close is just unbelievably exciting. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say a lot of the course members are also either students or graduates of the local music schools as well. So also you should all be very proud of your local music schools. They are tremendously talented.
We're very proud of the opera history, the operatic legacy of New Orleans. And these universities have played a major role in contributing a lot of performers that have made it to the world stage. And so, Oren, we are justly proud of those performers. You know, always, I think for us as the performers, the feedback from you as the audience is important. Your questions are very important. Many of you, of course, have seen Carmen, but this is one of those speak or forever hold your peace, or forever
Right,
read your libretto.
We have our first question right
I've
here.
been sitting on my question for
Oh,
15
jump in.
minutes now. I know, but I'm pretty. Just kidding. First off, guys, we are so grateful for the people who come here to New Orleans to do opera because we love it so much. But while you were talking, I could not help but notice that this is an opera called Carmen, and Carmen is the main character, and you've gone out of your way to make the men the main character, Don Jose in particular. It seems to me incredibly difficult to play Carmen today as a person, not this thing that just men just want to kill themselves over. To be a person when you're dealing with a stereotype, and yet she does have these moments of beauty. She does have them. And how did you personally, and I am free here, how did you find those moments of beauty in Carmen?
You mean when?
Yes,
In the opera?
yes.
The moment for me, the beauty, I also different because things I like doing in opera, it's, for example, I've got the moment, the love moment with Don Jose are really beautiful, just after the flowers, the aria. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, my speak is really. And, and this is for me a really beautiful moment. But the thing I like so much in this part is that you begin with some moments really brilliant and really light, like in the Habanera, it's like a game, also the second act. And for a singer, an artist, it's really interesting that you can make a run through all the affects until the death, and so you got some parts really dramatic, and you can find some. It's so exciting, and every time it's also different, depending on the colleagues you've got and what they give you, and it's really.
So do you think that Carmen is most herself when Don Jose is not on stage and she's just kind of fooling around with her friends?
No.
Okay.
No. Sorry, can you repeat?
Do you feel that Carmen is most herself in that scene, where she's just at the bar, and before Don Jose has shown up, and she's just kind of fooling around?
No. It's one part of the character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I love that. That's fabulous.
Question.
Yes.
Am I mistaken, is today, or certainly this week, not the anniversary of opera brought to this country and first appeared here in the city?
Well, not this particular time. The first documented performance of opera on the North American continent was here, May 22nd, 1796. So you're in the fall half of the season.
Well, I got it, sort of.
You got
Close enough.
But let me say, as the company moves forward to some very important anniversaries, as you know, in the 1718 season, it will be the 75th anniversary of what I refer to as the modern company, and it will be the 222nd anniversary of opera in New Orleans, and it will be the 300th anniversary of the city of New Orleans.
Oh, wait a minute.
And of course, you know, our important opera history centered around the French Opera House in the 19th century. It was the center of Creole culture and social and political and artistic culture. So all of those things are going to be building, heightening awareness of the role that opera played in the city of New Orleans over those centuries.
Well, I digressed from Carmen, but it was a point. But I did have another question.
Sure.
Do y'all feel like when you go home and take a bubble bath or a shower that you are still in your roles? and then
Carmen in a bubble bath is a very natural thing.
No, but I mean, when you are performing and practicing, do you take on the persona and it becomes a part of you? Well, both y'all.
It's funny that you say that because my wife always, she
says, "Oh, am I married to?"
No, because
She lives in Pink Bubble Bath.
there was one year where I did Henry VIII and Anna Bolena a number of times, and she's like, if you bring that character home, she was very worried because I really, I did a lot of research, and that's when she said, please don't bring that home with me. And then, I do a lot of devils, and so, those.
This lady's going to hell.
I do have to say, the one thing is when productions are over, I do sense there is a sense of loss for me. The transition part is a part of a performer's life which a lot of people aren't aware of. I think that's hard. It's hard to let go of a production. It's hard to let go of your colleagues and move on from job to job. Especially one that you like. When it's a production you don't really care for, it's fine. It's actually much easier to let go. But when it's a production you really like and you really enjoy, and it's a role you really enjoy doing, it's hard to say goodbye because it is a part of you. You're living it. You're absolutely living it. This is going to be very hard for me to say goodbye to this for a while, because I go home and when my 6 and my 9-year-old are climbing all over me and my wife, tells me to clean the cat box and do this and that. I'm not, it's not going to be. I'm not going to be Escamillo anymore.
Let me address an important point here that was made because it sounded as if we were making a conscious choice to emphasize the story line, the drama of the men.
Yes, it did.
And that's not at all what we do with Carmen. For example, I look at the second act of Carmen in particular. She is on stage from the beginning of the act until the end of the act. Once she makes her entrance in the first act to sing her entrance aria, the famous Habanera, she is on stage the complete act. The third act, however the director chooses to have her enter, she is on stage the complete act. And the fourth act, of course, is constructed with the procession to the bull ring, and when she appears, she's with Escamillo. And she is on stage after everyone else has left except Don Jose. So the structure of the piece keeps Carmen in focus. She is the most constant character in the opera.
But it's very easy to treat her as this immovable object.
The thing that I would say about that is this. I think it's important that you know that she has fallen in love with him. She is not, and that the Flintstones.
Be said. Give us the answer.
No, that's not true at all.
But I didn't know if you were thinking that she was merely playing games the entire time.
No, I see her as a very complicated character.
Okay.
Enormous.
Did you think that? Okay, right.
Yeah. So you talked about how it's really the story of Don Jose.
Well, it's his decline.
But I don't know. It's very easy to say that then Carmen is just this thing, and Don Jose is declining. Whereas, she is a passionate woman. She has her
She
love.
brings in the card trio.
And that's what
that
right.
thing of the card trio scene there.
Because
Yeah.
it is unusual. that the girl who dies at the end isn't just, you know, Rigoletto
Right.
or Ophelia. Oh, I love him, my.
Well, no, I think you're, I think you're right. She definitely develops. I think what's interesting is that when Don Jose is in prison, and he spent a month looking at this flower and looking out into the streets and seeing all the women go by and thinking there's only one woman for me, strangely enough, upon his arrival, his return to see Carmen, she tells all of her friends, I won't go with you into the mountains because I'm in love. There's a strange kind of parallel that's going on there.
Yeah,
and
but
her
she
seeking,
still gets tired of him.
Right. Yeah, right. They hardly know each other, really. And they go off, I think things turn awry, and she's seeking for something which is truer to her nature, as we all will, and turning towards what she hopes will be more like her. But boy, look at the journey she makes. She's living in the mountains as a criminal and being free, and I question how much she is Carmen still when she's gone off to Escamillo and is living in finery and walking on his hand and being in public and saying out loud, I love you, because those words hardly leave her mouth.
But that's why the opera is so fun, because she's not just this thing. She changes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think she does.
She has a real, genuine character,
Right.
which, I'm sorry, is rare in many operas.
Right.
I think
But
with
it
that
is
we're going to
called
have to
Carmen,
stop,
it's not John
unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
With that, we're going to have to stop. If you have more questions, because the ladies are ready for you on the other side. If you have more questions, please feel free to ask. I want to thank our panel for coming. Thank you very much. Go on to the other side. Thank you.